If you are a CEO trying to implement Power BI within your organization, but you don't quite fully understand it, you've perhaps seen a few visuals, seen a few demos, but you don't quite get it that how is it exactly going to help you solve your problems in the business. In this video, I want to debunk a lot of myths about Power BI and talk about Power BI from the lens of the CEO and without any jargon help you understand that what is the technology behind it and how it can or cannot help you in doing business intelligence. Let's start. It's very important that I talk about what Power BI is not right at the start before I talk about what Power BI is. This will help you understand and debunk your own myths in case you have heard it the wrong way. When you first take a look at any output that a Power BI report has generated, it's nothing but a set of visuals, charts, graphs, slicers on the screen that you can interact with and play around with your data. So you obviously tend to believe that Power BI is nothing but a visualization layer or a visualization tool where you feed in the data and then you build charts on top of that, which is, by the way, not wrong, but definitely not complete. If you are looking at Power BI as a mere visualization tool, then what you're focusing on is the 2% of the iceberg that can help you solve a lot of business problems. In the later part of the video, when I talk about what Power BI is, and I help you understand that it's just not a mere visualization tool, you'll try to appreciate the value that it brings to the table, and you'd also kind of go back and take a look at what actually are the processes and the manual things that Power BI can help you automate. With that being said, and the myths being broken, that it's not just a mere visualization tool, let's talk about if it's not just a visualization tool, then what is exactly Power BI? If I have to describe what exactly is Power BI, I'm going to tell you a story. And the story is of a data analyst, probably a guy who works under you, but you are mostly going to be familiar with his work. Let's just say that he puts together a financial report that he gives to you every single week, which is the report of how the company did in a week. And here is how the process of the work looks like. He starts by going to multiple places, perhaps Tally, some accounting software, your ERP, some Excel files, some Google Sheets, and he collects all the bunch of data that he needs to build that report. Unfortunately, the data is not in the right shape, and he then starts to clean the data, and that is stage one of his work, which could take howsoever long, perhaps a few hours, perhaps even a few days. Now, once that data is clean and readily used, now you start to write formulas, pivot tables, charts, whatever that is. You start to do all of that calculations to come up with the new numbers, the numbers that have changed in the last week. After you have done all of the calculation, which is say stage 2, doing the calculations, you then move on to stage 3, which is where he or she makes the data or the report or the summarization presentable. Now that presentation of the data could be in the form of an Excel dashboard, it could be a PowerPoint presentation, it could be an Excel pivot table, howsoever that might be. But then he is going to cleanse up a lot of work that he has done, summarize it, and make it into a presentable, usable format that the CEO can take a look at, which is you as the person. Now, these are the 3 broad parts of any analyst's work that they have to do it repeatedly over and over and over again. The repetition of the work does not come from the complexity of the work. It actually comes because the backend data has changed. So, because you now have a new week coming in and the data obviously has updated, all of the work that you did in Excel or whatever your tool of choice is, you would have to do that work once again. If this story sounds familiar, Power BI is just built to automate this kind of work and helps you achieve a lot more in a single click. With that story out of the way, let's just talk about that what exactly is Power BI. And I specifically want to talk about 4 essential components of Power BI, which after listening to the components, you'll be able to fit it together in the story and help you visualize that what part of the work or where in your business can Power BI actually help you. Let's start with part 1, which is data collection, consolidation, and cleaning. In technical terms, this data consolidation cleaning is also called as the ETL process, extract, transform, or load process. Even if you don't understand it, it's absolutely fine. What it simply means is that to be able to put together any kind of business analysis, you would want to go to the source data, get the source data, and because the source data is not going to be in the shape that you want it to be, so you start to clean the data, you start to transform data, apply filters, remove columns, write lookups, blah, blah, blah. You just prep the data so that it becomes usable, and one data source starts talking to the other data source, because you just can't build a report of a single data source. So you start to collect data from isolated places and start to put it together, and that is the part that takes a lot of time. Now, how does it relate to Power BI? There happens to be an engine in Power BI called the Power Query engine that is revolutionary, and it has the ability to connect with Excel, CSVs, even PDFs, websites, SQL Server, Oracle databases, plenty of sources, about 100 plus sources. And even if that is not enough, you can create your own complex data connectors as well. That's a more complicated part. But mostly, if your data is coming from simple databases like SQL, Excel, CSVs, PDFs, you are kind of good to go. It connects to all of those sources and grabs the data in the most rawest possible format. You can do the things inside of Power Query, and then it can clean the data for you, and then you can load it into a model. The model comes in the second stage, but what Power Query actually does is it does the data cleaning. The good part about Power Query is that the next week, when the new data kicks in, the cleaning that you have now done, not in Excel, but in Power Query, can be repeated on the new data as well, and you would not have to bat an eye, you would not have to break the sweat. That part is one of the transformative parts of Power BI that helps you collect the data, consolidate the data, cleanse the data, and make it readily usable in just one single click. And that's part one of Power BI, which is the Power Query engine. Let's just move on to part number 2 of Power BI, which is the modeling and the calculation engine, and there is something special about it. Once the data has been cleansed through Power Query, it enters the second phase in the modeling and the calculation engine. The technical name of that engine is called the Vertipack engine, which is where the data is stored, and that engine uses a special formula language that looks like Excel but works very differently than Excel. The formula language that Power BI uses is called the DAX formula language, Data Analysis Expressions. Now, you can do a variety of simple and very, very complicated calculations, and the engine is really, really fast using the DAX formula language. Now, I don't really want to get into the technicals and nitty-gritties of the DAX formula language, but here is what you as the CEO or the CFO of the company would want. Let's just say that you're taking a look at a number, which is monthly churn, or you're taking a look at total sales, or whatever that number is. Now, you just don't want to take a look at the number in isolation. You want to slice and dice the number in any way possible. For example, you could perhaps take a look at the revenue numbers by region. You could perhaps take a look at the revenue numbers by quarter. You could perhaps take a look at the revenue numbers by the different stores that you have. The underlying metric is the same, which is total revenue. But the way in which you slice and dice the data could be number of dimensions and the number of filters. And that's exactly what the DAX formula engine or the modeling engine allows you to do without breaking a sweat once again. You write the calculations once, but the power of the DAX engine and the modeling engine is such that the very calculation that you wrote, which is total sales, can now be sliced and diced by any possible dimension. When I say any possible, I mean to say most possible dimensions. You have to build the model in such a way. And that's the real power of using the Power BI modeling engine. You write the calculation once, and then you decide how do you want to slice or dice the calculation, because what you're actually taking a look at, the same metric, but in different angles of the business, and that proves incredibly useful for the CEO. The final stage, after you have done all of that work, you've cleansed the data, automated it, you've done the modeling, and the modeling is now allowing you to do slicing and dicing of the data. We now move on to the third part, which is the visualization layer. And how do you present the data beautifully? When it comes to visualization, I agree that this is not the strongest point that Microsoft is trying to compete on. I would rather recommend much better visualization tools like Tableau that provide slick and crazy looking animations and visualizations. But in case you're okay with reasonably good visualizations that provide you a great value, and you're not looking for the most sophisticated, most slick and shiny looking chart, Power BI is going to do a reasonably good job in providing you what you need. Now, there are some really good people out there that can outshine Tableau as well and build some really slick visualizations with Power BI. And Power BI, I would recommend, has a decent enough visualization library that solves for a lot of purposes. With all of the data that you have summarized and analyzed, you can now present that in the form of beautiful dashboards and reports that you might want to consume. When Microsoft put these three tools together, which were, by the way, launched in Excel first, which is Power Query Engine, the DAX and the Formula Engine, and the visualization layer, they put all of these three things together and they formed a product called Power BI Desktop. And that, my friend, is absolutely free. So in case you want to do some work and you want to test out Power BI, I think the best place to start within your organization is to download Power BI Desktop absolutely free. There are no limitations to using Power BI Desktop. You can use it, the latest version, all of the features absolutely free without spending a single dime. And you can actually see that if it actually works for your company or not. Well, at the start of this video, I spoke about that there are 4 parts of Power BI, but so far I've just spoken about 3 parts of Power BI. And I am saying that the first 3 parts, which is the Power Query Engine, the DAX engine, and the visualization engine, are nothing but the Power BI Desktop software. So what exactly is the 4th part, which is nothing but sharing? And let's just talk about that. When it comes to sharing the work that your analyst has done with his peers or his supervisors, maybe the CEO or the CFO of the company, like you are, the conventional method of sharing goes something like this. The person does the work. Maybe he produces an Excel file or a PowerPoint presentation. He attaches that PowerPoint presentation in an email, writes a bunch of text along with that, and shoots that off to the CEO of the company. The CEO opens the presentation, takes a look at it, gives the feedback, and the feedback then goes back to the analyst. The analyst reworks out the presentation, marks that at version number 2, and then sends it back to the CEO or the CFO of the company. And this to and fro kind of keeps on going on over and over again till the time you're on version number 10 and the final day of presenting the data has arrived, which is the traditional method of sharing the work. It's absolutely fine if you're doing that. But Microsoft thought that let's just make a new method of sharing the reports or the dashboard, and what they are calling it now as Power BI Service, which also actually makes Microsoft money. Once you have done the report building in Power BI Desktop, which is, by the way, absolutely free, there are 2 ways in which you can share it. The traditional method, that means that Power BI file that you have made coming out from the desktop application, you could attach it in the email and send it off to somebody, and the person can take a look at it. The other method that Microsoft proposes, and it is kind of more secure, is sharing via something called as Power BI Service, now called as the Fabric layer. Let me help you understand what do I mean by that. So once the analyst completes the report and the dashboard in the desktop version of the software, he doesn't attach and send that very Power BI file. Instead, he clicks on the publish button of that Power BI file and securely shares that Power BI file with somebody else. Now, in between, when he's publishing that Power BI file, that visualization and that model is uploaded on powerbi.com and the Power BI service. From there, the other person can log in and then take a look at the report. So the other person never gets to see the Power BI file. What they get to see is nothing but the work of Power BI, which is the visualization, the charts, the slicers that you have built, and it's interactive. You can play around with that. You can slice and dice the data. You can click on the charts, all of that. This method of sharing has 2 major benefits. Benefit number 1 is that you obviously share that with a specific person, and the person never gets the access to the actual model and the data. They just get access to the eventual and the final work that somebody has done. So nobody can mess up with the formulas that you have written, the code that you have written, all the Power Query work that you have set it up. Nobody can mess up with that because they are getting the access to the end report. The second major benefit that you would want to get, which companies also wanted, is something called as row-level security. Let me help you understand what do I mean by that. As the CEO or the CFO of the company, perhaps you just want to take a look at the entire data of the company. No matter whatever region, no matter whatever store, you want to see everything. But when you give the access of the same report to your regional manager, you don't want him to take a look at what's happening in the western region or the southern region if he belongs to the region of north. So you perhaps would want some kind of security on the same model that the model automatically limits the data to only the region belonging to north when the dashboard is going to the northern region manager. Obviously, that is possible through Power BI's sharing service with something called as row-level security, which is the technical name of that. And that is only possible once you buy licenses for the sharing capability of Power BI, which in the lowest version is about $10, $14. I think Microsoft has changed the prices at the moment. I'm going to leave a few links so that you can take a look at the prices. But whatever the prices are, they're pretty nominal at the moment. So what you will get is the licenses or the login IDs. On the login IDs, you can upload your models and share it with other people. And you can also enjoy other benefits like row-level security, limiting the access and things like that. Now, in this sharing environment of Power BI, there are some other fantastic features as well that a lot of enterprise-grade customers are using who have developed a bunch of reports like data flows, like a Fabric environment, like deployment pipelines, more advanced features that are there in the Fabric environment, which used to be Power BI service. That was the name initially. Now they have relabeled it to Fabric, but that's what the advanced features are. But these key 4 features actually make Power BI. There's a Power BI desktop application, which in turn is made up of the data cleaning layer, which is Power Query, the modeling layer, which is the DAX formula language that allows you to write sophisticated formulas and do the calculations, and then the visualization layer, which is what you take a look at in the end. That produces a Power BI file, which is the desktop file, which you then upload it to Power BI service, and from service, you start sharing it with anybody whom you need. The service part of Power BI is paid, and there are several plans in that, depending upon how far do you want to go in taking Microsoft service. But the desktop part of Power BI is absolutely free. In case you're interested in exploring Power BI and understanding it in even more depth, to what all business application could you use it for? And is your business ready to use Power BI in terms of its data maturity or not? We do a lot of consulting work for medium to large scale companies in India and abroad. In case you're interested, we would love to help. I'm going to leave some contact details at the bottom of this video, and my team and I would be glad to help. I'll see you around in the next videos. Cheers.